I think we'll just go on a little tour of the end section. If I can get to both of the bosses quickly, I'll... What the? Look how much damage my burn bomb is doing alone. Okay, this black market is really overpowered. They will be doing another bullet run, this time with a fire tactic build. After this episode, I will be starting to throw in some more content with other characters again. I will probably show off some more bullet eventually, but I don't want it to be all bullet all the time for the channel right now. So we're gonna do one more run at regular 80 instead of Transcendence 80 this time. Mostly because of the fact that I already did record an entire 1 hour long Transcendence 80 run that I actually managed to beat this time instead of dying at Susano. But then what happened is that I was on the wrong OBS settings. I have different profiles on OBS for different things, and it recorded at really low quality, so unfortunately that footage is just completely unusable. I won't upload something like that. Anyways, we're running with Fire Spirit Assist and Fire Spirit Detonation. Fire Spirit Detonation has been one of my favorite, my personal favorite things to use. It doesn't get a whole lot of usage due to it, especially in Transcendence, due to it just being a bit weaker. It needs a little bit of a damage bonus to be able to keep up with some of the really high tier tactic setups. And then on Rachel, we're running Dash Burn with Burn Bomb. Burn Bomb is one of the newer additions to the fire tree. Attacking an enemy afflicted with burn triggers the launch of fire projectile, which are with each projectile inflicting 600 damage. Burn Bomb, especially when combined with Rachel as a legacy character, gives you a little bit of damage over time, basically. If an enemy is burning and they're being hit by Rachel's passive bats, the bats count as an attack for all kinds of purposes, so they will constantly trigger the burn bomb for me, even if I'm not actively fighting an enemy. So it's a pretty cool setup to use. Like I said before, the Fire Spirit Detonation is something I've always liked using as an option, especially in non-Transcendence and for early parts of the run. It really does do enough burst damage to make clearing out the normal enemies pretty easy and make the first boss fights pretty easy. Where it starts falling off more in damage is towards the later bosses of the run, especially in Transcendence, where bosses get really high HP scaling. But with the build that I'm going for today, it will be maximizing on the damage that the Fire Spirit Detonation is able to do. We'll explain that stuff more once I get into the other red effects. Right now, the Fire Spirit Detonation is just a really strong burst tool that goes off as long as I'm attacking and dashing through enemies, which I normally always would be anyways. One of the specific things I look for with this build is Fire Spirit Combo. We're going to be able to generate a bunch of Fire Spirits, so I like having the stacking damage bonus for each one that hits. So last time I didn't talk too heavily about the balance of Bullet in terms of like how strong she was and that type of thing. I really don't like making that type of decision really early on based on just a few runs. I wanted to make sure I got higher run counts in first, and then also I hadn't done the boss rush on her yet either at that point. Now that I have done a lot more runs, I think she's very solidly a top-tier character. There's really not much to dispute for power. I've said this before, but the word of being overpowered in this game has kind of lost its meaning to me personally, just because of I know enough information about the game that I can make any character look pretty overpowered. But that being said, some of the things that would normally that I would normally look into with character strength is things like how efficiently can they clear out the regular rooms, so basically their AoE damage, their bossing damage, and then another big one for me is how difficult is it to get to the point of their potentials where you have their main tools. And when I think about all these categories for Bullet, she excels in all of them. Bullet really doesn't have any glaring weaknesses, in my opinion. The closest thing to a weakness I would maybe say is that her bossing can be a little bit awkward to get used to, with the fact that she can't do her normal grab moves on bosses, but she has multiple different ways of playing around that. So it's more of a learning curve type of thing than it being a weakness of the actual character itself. And then on top of having very good room clearing, so in terms of room clearing, you can see it in action as I'm playing right now. Basically, if you just press the grab button once every so often, and you're aiming them somewhat decently, it's really hard to miss these, honestly, because they just have so much effective damage range. And then on top of that, they deal very high damage as well, even without any tactics to boost them or anything. So, in terms of being able to clear out normal rooms quickly, she's really high tier in that. She doesn't have any problems with it, even from right at the beginning of the game, with no potentials. Her boss damage becomes very high as well, once you get the middle upgrade here. When hitting a grab immune enemy performs an explosion attack, that gives her the damage output she needs, even if she can't be grabbing the bosses. And then on top of that, she also has the burn effect here, in Afterburner, where you'll get a stacking damage over time buff. Learning to keep that damage over time buff active and being able to use it is something that really skyrockets her bossing damage as well. So I've heard a couple people say that they are having a hard time bossing with her. That was mostly like stuff I heard during the first days, so it might have just been that people needed some time to get used to how she plays. But it is something I did hear a couple times. If you are having a hard time with her bossing, make sure you look for those two things. The burn from heat up, and then the universal enhancement that allows you to deal damage even if you can't grab an enemy. The fact that this burn effect is able to stack and deal more damage, the more stacks you're able to get onto it, is what makes her part of what makes her a very powerful character. Aside from already having very high base damage on any of her throw moves, also being able to stack that burn effect on top of it just pushes her damage output even higher. And then the other criteria I mentioned was how quickly can she get to the point of being strong through potentials. She has that very strong 3 potential power spike that I mentioned, where you get heat up and the burn effect from it, and then also the universal enhancement where grabbing a non-grabbable enemy does additional damage. So she has that very strong power spike on its own. And then she can get another big power spike as well, with maybe 4 more potentials. Obviously, this is saying in like best case scenario where you're actually able to get the proper potentials. But if you're running stuff like the higher entropy settings, you get a lot of refreshes from there. And then if you have the Mind Crystal, you also get refreshes from there. But anyways, he has another big power spike with around 4 more potentials, where if you get up attack with its invincibility potential, and then you get up plus skill with its invincibility potential, her grabs become fully invincible after that point. So not only does she have a high base damage value, she has a burning effect on top of that, and then she also gets a lot of safety from her grabs being fully invulnerable. So next thing I want to talk about, part of the reason why I wanted to show off a burn build is that I like this build anyways, so I wanted to show it off at some point, but Bullet is also a perfect time to show it, because a commenter on YouTube by the name of Poro mentioned that they thought they had noticed some of these burning passives applying to Bullet's burning passive as well. I went and tested that out, and that is definitely the case. So if you have durable burn, her burn also now lasts 3 seconds longer. If you have powerful burn, the ticks happen faster. So these make an already strong character significantly stronger on top of that. Conflagration also works with her passive, though you don't really need it, I don't think, because there's not really a good way to stack this against bosses, and normal enemies should be getting cleared out fairly easy anyways, just with her throw AoE damage. Catching fire does not work at all with this, which again, you probably wouldn't need it. You would most likely want to be going durable burn, just because of how easy, or how much easier, at least, it makes her burn to keep stacked fully. Her burn has a little bit of a weird thing in how it works. Depending on what move you use, the duration is going to be different for the burn. So for example, one of the burns is on her 2-hit combo, just her basic attack, like that. That burn is normally very, very short, somewhere around like 2 seconds, maybe even 1 second. It's extremely short. And for example, if I do a longer burn that has like a 3-second duration, or even like a 5-second duration, and then I hit an enemy with a burn that has a low duration, like this one, the durations of the burn don't stack, only the damage does. So you could have a pretty big stack of burn set up, and then accidentally do your basic combo, or do your basic combo without thinking about this, and make your burn stacks fall off very quickly. So this, the passive of having extra burn duration from the fire tactic tree is something that massively increases your ability to keep these stacks going. And then on top of that, the final upgrade for the fire tactics makes the burn ticks much faster, and which just really drastically increases the damage output that her burning passive is able to deal. Like I said, it's already very strong without these upgrades on top of it, and these upgrades just make it all the more better. So really, if you can fit burning into your tactic build somewhere without having to give up too much, then it's something that is very, very beneficial to bullet. Another thing I'm going to be looking for with this build specifically is focused fire projectile. This is very important for... We're building another synergy between multiple red tactics again, like we did in the last video and like we do in a lot of my videos. I really enjoy finding these kind of synergies between multiple different red tactics. That's one of the things that's kept me playing the game for so long, personally. Partially because I really like the way that the characters can play and control in this game. But then, while I've even said this a lot myself, that tactic balance is kinda all over the place in this game, and that in Transcendence especially, a lot of tactics just aren't really worth using anymore. But despite that, I still find the build crafting in this game to be very fun. In a way, it kinda scratches the itch that games I grew up playing, like Diablo, Torchlight, that type of thing, has always, I've always enjoyed those type of build crafting games. So one thing I want to talk about a little bit as well during this video, now that we're kinda somewhere in the middle of it, probably not quite to that middle point yet, but my channel has recently been able to pass 900 subscribers. I was getting decently close to that point before bullets dropped, but every time a new character drops, I get a very big spike in views and subscribers, which is really nice to have. And I usually don't ask for subscribers, it's not something I really care to do, even though a lot of people will say that it's good to have that in the middle of your video somewhere. Anyways, the reason I'm talking about it at all is because if I can make it up to 1,000 subscribers, then I start getting paid a little bit of the money that YouTube makes from running advertisements, and that is something that would be really big for me. Due to having health issues, it's not really viable for me to find like a full-time job, because things are very inconsistent for me, basically. So being able to make money off of actually doing YouTube is something that would make a big difference to me. So if you guys are new to the channel and you're enjoying it so far, consider subscribing, and then if you've been around for a while and you haven't subscribed, it is something that would help me out quite a lot. If not, then I appreciate people even just watching or commenting on the videos. Anything like that is nice for me. Even though I haven't been responding to quite as many of the comments as I used to, I still read all of them regardless. I've been mostly prioritizing towards answering any questions that come up. Otherwise, I've been trying to not spend quite so much time looking at comments and views and stuff. Okay, so this is going to be a very important part of the build to pick up upon hitting or killing an enemy. The fire projectiles spawn fire spirits. So now I'll go ahead and explain how the build works now that things are set up. So again, upon hitting or killing an enemy, the fire projectiles spawn fire spirits. Those fire spirits generated in this way will also be able to apply fire spirit detonation. When hitting a burning enemy, they have a 50% chance to explode, dealing a bunch of bonus damage. The burn bomb will also be making a constant source of fire projectiles as well, which will then also go into the fire spirit detonation. So this build has really high burst damage when you're using the legacy. When you're using both of your legacies at once, it has some pretty good burst damage when the fire spirits themselves are activated, and then you have some damage over time from Dash Burn and Burn Bomb. Dash Burn itself isn't really anything too special in terms of DPS, but Burn Bomb also being able to turn into Fire Spirit Detonation lets it do a lot more damage over time than it normally would. And then this is also why we want to make sure and go into Focused Fire Projectile. That way you can hit as many fire projectiles as possible. It makes them come out in kind of this cone shape, rather than spreading out around you in all directions. There's a couple ways you can do this build. You can run it as the... you can run it in the legacy slot, like I'm doing right now. That'll give you pretty easy access to some really good burst damage, since you're able to stack both of the... since you're able to stack both of the casts of fire projectiles at once. You could also put it on the skill slot instead. The fire projectiles, that is. And then you can have them going off more frequently as you're fighting normal enemies and using your skills, and as you're fighting the boss fight. I think that way would probably have more sustained damage over time, and then you also don't have to worry about using your legacies as well. Like, I won't be using this all that much during normal enemy rooms, since it's not really worth it to take the time to do setting up the burn and then using a legacy skill, as opposed to just killing the enemies myself. But during boss fights, it will be useful to set up. And then what you can do, if you're running a skill version of Fire Spirits, or Fire Projectiles instead, is you can go into Lightning Chain with Legacy Thunderstorm, and you can take... let me see if I can find it here. You can take Thundercloud Fire Projectile. That will also be another source of just being able to spawn more fire projectiles that turn into fire spirits. The whole like chain reaction effect works the same way, regardless of where the fire projectiles come from. That Thundercloud variant is what I used to run on this build pretty often. It's the main problem with it is that it's very inconsistent, because it's much harder to get the Thundercloud where it'll get max projectile hits compared to having the legacy fire projectiles instead. Sorry, the naming conventions of things get really messy when I'm having to talk about builds, because there's fire spirits and fire projectiles, very similar name, but two different things, and I need to make sure I try not to mix up the two when I'm talking. The multi-fire projectiles would help out a lot with what we're doing, but I don't mind also just waiting until it shows up as a higher rarity. Like I said before, the burn effect here where the ticks happen faster, is also applying to Bullet's burning passive and making it a lot stronger, so getting that ascended to gold rank is something that's going to be quite helpful. Sometimes with Bullet, I feel like I end up getting stuck in casting the up plus dash input when I'm not meaning to. I think that's probably my own fault though, and not Bullet as a character. I tend to dash quite heavily in this game, so if at any point my control stick is just slightly pointing up, it's easy to accidentally get those. I know it's a problem I had with S a lot as well, with having one of her inputs on one of the dash directions. So in regards to this fire build, it's something I find really fun to run on non-Transcendence. On Transcendence difficulty, I wouldn't want it to run, or I wouldn't want to run it on characters that aren't Bullet. The damage just doesn't quite keep up with what Transcendence throws at you. That's a pretty common theme, though, for tactics. With Bullet, this build can still keep up anyways, just because of... It's still very strong early game to help you get through the early parts until you can get some potentials and stuff stacked up. And then the fact that it makes her burning passive more powerful allows Bullet's already high damage to carry you through the rest of the run after that point. One thing I've been wanting to show off with this run, too, is... I haven't really been good about doing it yet, so I'll try to do it in the next area. Part of the reason, or part of the problem, is that on non-Transcendence, everything dies too quickly for me to really show off a lot, especially when I have a decently strong build going on. Like, look at that right there. That is by no means bad damage at all. But now keep in mind that I do have a black market effect right now that's boosting tactic damage by 150%. So the damage I got off of raw tactics right there is a lot more than what you would normally see with the build. But like I said, it's a really fun build to use in my opinion. I think it's worth running. But anyways, a couple things I want to try to show off with Bullet in this last area. Honestly, I'm gonna skip the Covenant. We're way too overpowered already. A couple things I want to show off are the Pursuit mechanic. And that's one of the potentials that you can get for Bullet. Basically, what I've been kind of referring it to as Hazama chains, except it takes no skill. You don't have to aim them yourself at all. You just have to point in the direction of the enemy you want to go to and press the button, and it automatically tracks them for you. And then, based on what upgrades you have for it. It can also be invulnerable, and you will be able to follow attacks afterwards. The follow-up attacks just come from passives itself. Hang on a second, let me... Once a song starts like having vocals or starts talking in the background and I'm trying to do my own explanation, it makes things a lot more difficult for me, so I just had to skip that real quick. But yeah, the lock-on is basically easy mode Hazama chains. And then in order to unlock the invincibility for it, you need to have the up plus attack unlocked, and then also the invincibility for up plus attack. And then I'm also trying to show off some of her more combo-based attacks, or her like physical attack-based stuff in this last area, instead of just spamming her throws like I normally have been doing. I think her throws are still much better in terms of damage output and usefulness, but she can get away with her basic attacks as well, if you have a decent set of tactics helping you out with that. Like right now, it wouldn't even really matter too much, even if I was on a character with really weak basic attacks. If I have them marked with fire for Fire Spirit detonation, those can pretty much just take out regular enemies for me. One thing that's really cool about not necessarily even just Bullet's normal attacks, but also even her grabs, they can be used in ways to augment your basic movement, which is something I do a lot, just not even really thinking about it as I'm playing Bullet. So like for one example, well, let me get out of this menu first. I don't know what else I really need to pick up at this point. I think I have Lock-On maxed. I have Afterburner maxed. I guess I don't have any of my heavy attack stuff. That might be what I want to see. Though also, I can just take this for the increased SP rate hidden effect. That'll make it easier to use Lock-On, so that's probably what I'll do for now. So one example of this is that you can get around faster, actually. Instead of just doing regular triple dash, you can dash, do a dash attack, and you get a lot of, well, a lot may be a little bit of a overstatement, but you get a pretty good amount of extra bonus speed just by implementing dash attacks between your normal dash movement. And then stuff like her up attack is a very good just ground to aerial movement tool, while also being able to attack enemies on top of that. Her down plus dash is a very good movement tool diagonally. That's something you have to be careful with, though. You can easily... It goes very fast, and which can make it hard to control, and can put you in some situations where you throw yourself into danger. That is definitely something I've done once or twice. It can also be a little bit weird if you spam the button too much. You can actually like use it multiple times in midair, so you can kind of throw yourself off that way compared to what you're expecting to do. Either way, very, very good movement tool. And then you can combine a lot of this stuff together, like doing up attack, dash attack, down attack, to get a lot of movement without actually using a lot of your dashes up. I think Bullet's movement is some of the most satisfying in the game, honestly, just because of how well everything flows together. Not only are you moving, but you're also able to attack at the same time. Bullet's a really cool character so far. I'm really enjoying playing her. After the first couple of runs that I played, I was a little bit worried that I had seen all of her attacks too early, and that she was going to get boring because of being a little more on the simple side than other characters. But playing her more, it's actually been like the opposite. I've been enjoying her a bit more as I play her more instead. Now that I kind of see she has some room for higher skill gameplay, even if she is a very simple character. I talked about just the characters controlling really well in this game earlier, and I think a lot of that is that even just the simple fact of moving around efficiently in this game feels very good to do. You have really good movement options with triple dash and just your regular character jumps and triple dash alone, along with the fact that you can do a downwards jump very quickly. I guess I can pick up skill rend and hope I somehow get rending impact. I guess if we see another tactic space, we can YOLO for it. Otherwise, it's probably not too likely. Rending impact is something you can put into any build, and it will be good. Because rending impact is... It gets a little complicated in how damage increases work, but basically rending impact applies after other damage increases. So it's, despite having a smaller percentage than stuff like Frost and Radiance, it is something that is really effective towards the end of runs when your character is scaled up pretty heavily through having a lot of potentials put together. And then also, to really sweeten the deal of rending impact, it also increases the damage of tactics, which most things in this game do not. There's very few examples of things that do, like rending impact and Ragna's Second Legacy. Which also reminds me of a very important detail of Bullet, specifically. The game doesn't tell you this at all, but a couple of us have been testing it out, and her Heat Up passive, so it just tells you damage increases for a short time after a successful throw. This is a 50% damage boost that also applies after some of the other damage effects. So it's very efficient as a damage increase, and then again, it also applies to tactic damage, which is actually massive, because the other two things that I mentioned apply to tactic damage, Ragna's Second Legacy and Rending Impact, are both on the much lower scale. They're closer to 10% of a damage increase to tactics. Meanwhile, Bullet is just running around with a pretty easy 50% damage increase to both herself and tactics. That is not very difficult to upkeep. This is Rending Impact, by the way, what I was talking about. Enemies inflicted with Rend lose their super armor and take an additional 14% damage. We don't know the, exact order of how things are calculated when it comes to, having multiple damage increases that get calculated later. But we know that certain things are calculated before any other damage increases, and certain things are calculated after. Section. If I can get to both of the bosses quickly, I'll... What the? Look how much damage my burn bomb is doing alone. Okay, this black market is really overpowered. I already knew this to begin with, but seeing that just really put this black market into a whole different perspective. Because I don't think I even had dash burn on her for them to be exploding into the Fire Spirit detonation. I think I just had the Fire Spirit, or the fire projectiles creating Fire Spirits, and both of those doing damage. What the heck? Like, I know Elevator Non is one of the biggest jokes of a boss, due to just having, well, we go from the biggest joke of a boss to one of the actual hardest bosses, though it's not going to be a problem with the damage we have right now. But anyways, I know Elevator Non is like considered mostly a joke if you have any kind of decent build setup, but I really did not expect her to just randomly die to a passive effect as I was talking. I don't think I used the lock-on mechanic in the last area very much, even after saying I was going to try to. It's something that it's really difficult for me to show off specific things while I'm doing commentary, if they're outside of how I normally play the character. Because when I play the character through, or when I play the character on top of doing commentary, I'm mostly just relying on my muscle memory. Oops. I want to see the burn bomb just do a bunch of damage again. Now it's proccing the detonating fire spirits, so you can see that that whole chain reaction of things works even on the burn bomb. And then again, the way that I'm triggering burn bomb passively like that, he just died mid-grab. That's funny. Anyways, how I'm triggering the burn bomb passively like this is by using Rachel as one of my legacy characters. She just gives you these passive bats, which occasionally go out and attack enemies, and then their attacks count for all sorts of things, like burn bomb, they count for frost attack, they count for stuff like frost burn, frost, or basically anything you can throw on the attack slot, they will trigger. So it's a very unique legacy mechanic in that way. You can do a lot of really cool stuff if you put it with certain attack tactics. So yeah, that was just a quick and easy normal 80 entropy run to show off some of the other stuff with Bullet that I didn't get to show off before. I think I mentioned it at the start, but I'm gonna go back to showing off some new characters and builds soon. I don't want to just upload like 14 Bullet videos in a row. I will upload some more Bullet most likely in the near future, but don't worry about the channel just being pure Bullet for a while. And then again, I'll just mention it one more time. It's not something I'm going to be bugging people about on every single video, or even that often. But if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please consider it, as getting up to 100, or getting up to 1,000 is something that would really make a big difference for me. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.